Okay. Um, so today we're going to be talking about Ready or Not, Here We Come Virtual World. So defining community, defining where we started and where we have gotten to today. And then the next time, so in 2 months, I hope that you join me at that point. We have leveling the virtual playing field, June 9th. And then that will be learning together and sharing our experience. And then the next part will be to the community and beyond. So we're going to be talking about community and how that can really, what are we defining that now? How are we going to go forward with this? How are we going to make sure we're reaching the people that we've been able to reach now and continue that work? So in that, let's jump into it. I want to hear from you all. How are you all defining community? The definition online is a unified body of individuals, such as people with common interests living in a particular area itself. So we've defined community as who we're around, those people. And I think before COVID, we defined that as physically around us. And so as we're talking about this too, I want you to think today of the center. And in general, you have to do community activities. What does that look like? How has that been carried out before? What have you thought outside of the box of how we traditionally know of a center? And if you're waiting for me to introduce the speakers, just want to say you all are the speakers. So again, that mute button is in the corner of your menu bar. So I'm interested to hear what everybody is defining. And Mike Beers, I do want to start with you because y'all have been defining community very interesting for a while.
Hey. Right on. Thank you, Sierra. This is Michael Beers, from Missoula, Montana. I think looking at the definition you put up there, Sierra, that's really where we've tried to get back to. And I don't know about anybody else on the call, but in my years in independent living, I don't know that I've seen a real focus on people when it comes to community. I think for a variety of reasons, our emphasis seems to be when we say community living, it's do you have a place to live of your choice and do you have employment? And those things are really, really important in the entire person's life. Community is not a physical place to us. Community is not Missoula. Uh, Community is a group of people that honestly give a shit whether you show up or not. And when you don't, they call and they care and wonder where you're at. And building, I like in that definition, it says interest. So building community more on interest than label. I think it's something that we've really tried to focus on pre-pandemic and definitely during the pandemic to say, that's what we're missing. We're missing that human connection and that human community. And how do we access that when we can't actually be in the same room? So yeah, that's a little bit of the approach we've taken.
Thank you for sharing that. I guess, does anybody else want to jump in? How are you defining community before? Um, is it the people that were around you, or is it the people that had this shared interest? Is it certain pockets of people or populations or um, groups?
I'll jump in. I'm Paige Winget, she, her, hers. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina with Able, South Carolina, and I oversee our youth programs. And so I think for us, we find that we have different pockets of community. So the youth is a huge part of that, but it's not the only part of that. So when we look at like our organization as a community, making sure we're representing all those that we're serving. That includes youth because that's a huge population that we serve. So having youth on staff, and then same when we're in our community, right? Whatever that looks like. So when we're working with agencies to represent that disability voice, if it's youth focused, are we bringing youth with us? So being mindful of the spaces that we're in and what seats are empty, so to say. And then I don't know about other SILs, but we were doing some online things before. And we were kind of keeping those separate. And that this shift of doing everything virtually has really got us rethinking on this idea and approach of how can we, we had a youth online hangout and a youth in-person hangout. And so those became two separate communities. And so how can we pull that hybrid model in and maybe connect those that we hadn't thought to connect before? How can we run that at the same time so that they're interacting with one another and building another sense of community?
Yeah, if I may jump in here, I'm Steve Woodard from Lyft in Billings. And the comments that have been made so far are definitely excellent. I would just like to add to that our community also includes the other service providers that we want to collaborate with to provide services to people with disabilities. So we are constantly reaching out there to remind people that we're here, we're available, we're able to help when needed. So in a nutshell, that's that.
This is Lilibeth from Kalite. We're in Los Angeles, California. Hello. So I came to meet the disability rights movement in the mid '80s, and for us, then we found community. I found community as the people who like like myself, who were wheelchair users. Most of us then were fighting for accessible transportation. Our community was issue driven. So it was also mostly the community that share that issue. And then when we fought for the ADA, our disability, other disability focused organizations, we found them, we found each other, we got to know the other members of different disabilities, and so our community grew. And I think we got out of our silos, and that was wonderful. And we were going to the Capitol every year. That was really wonderful. And then we got to know the technology. And so there was the phone, the internet. And so our community even grew. And then the lockdowns. So with the lockdowns with COVID, we were all taken by surprise, and we grieved as a community. But we were not mindful of Zoom. And we thought that I think the average of us thought that the computer was only for some things, but then we got linked to Zoom, and voila, we opened our community, right? So we're doing that here, and but I think we still tend to be working around our own individual communities. And so we still feel the need to reach out. I think the opening of the state would give us that opportunity. But also I feel that the political climate, even if we're able to link, more and more, we're being divided. So that's really the challenge to our community. So for us, community is really this organic thing that has to rise above everything, because if we don't join with each other, we're also at risk. We're also at risk. So anyway, thank you.
Hi, this is Gene Hughes from Utica, New York. Utica is probably smack dab in the middle of New York. And I've got to agree with the speaker from California. I think we're more segmented and siloed now. Oneida County is surrounded by red counties. So one, you can't talk politics. Two, you can't talk about disability issues to certain people because they are, I'll be kind and say they have some weird thinking. But I think that the influx of more virtual meetings has it made it easier to connect. So I would disagree with the definition of shared common interests. And I think that we more focused in where we need to go and what we think we can be successful as. Unlike Washington, obviously, but yeah, I think because of that, the last 4 years we've been more siloed just because of political reasons, which is unfortunate. But I don't know. That's my take.
Hi, I'd like to say something. My name is Nadine Autry. I work at Center for Independent Living in Frederick, and we serve Frederick and Carroll counties. And since the pandemic, and we've been working virtually, I find that where there was this segmented, you have your funding, we have our funding, don't touch us. We don't want to deal with you. We don't want you to touch our funding. We don't want to work with you. That has changed in the last year. And I find that organizations that normally would not invite us to their meetings or invite us to be a part of what they're doing are doing that now that we're virtual, because there are things that we have that they need, and there are things that they have that we need. And so we've come together in a way that we never have been able to before in the state of Maryland. And so that I find that it's different for so many other people in listening to the others that have said something before. Oh, sorry.
Hey, this is Elizabeth from Disability Rights and Resources in Birmingham, Alabama. I agree with what everybody's been saying. And I think prior to the pandemic, I know that when we talked about community at my center, it was kind of this nebulous idea, right? We're here for the community, but it was never like a defined type of, it was just this generic, all of Alabama kind of people with disabilities. But I think one thing that really helped us was the CARES Act funds that we were able to get. So we were able to actually reach the people with disabilities in our rural areas that we weren't able to reach before. And then we were able to bring them into our virtual meetings. And so through that, they've been able to join several of our Disability Action Coalition meetings and our happy hour events. And we were just able to create a lot of good virtual peer support groups. And like Michael said, which I totally agree with, these are a group of people that we all give a shit about each other, and you know it and you can feel it. And that has really just made our center personally just grow. Another area that we help define ourselves inside the center as a community. I think prior to the pandemic, and this had to do with a lot more of staff turnover than the pandemic, but we didn't talk about our own disabilities within our center. And I think once we started to be able to recognize, hey, I have a disability, here's my disability, tell me about yours. I think that helped us be members of the community, right? So I think prior it was an us and them. And now that we've stretched that line where we are on these happy hour events and we're participating not as quote unquote staff members, but as people with disabilities, I think that really helped us.
So I had just to kind of let you know, I had this idea for this call and it was going to be about this, and you all have already blown my mind, and I want to go in 5 different directions, and I love it. But I think that's one, just to kind of emphasize what you had just shared of sometimes we get stuck in that work cycle, and we're working, and these are our consumers. And so understanding that that is what sets us apart as Centers for Independent Living. We are our own peers. We provide that peer mentoring and support by a lot of us being people with disabilities, or having that lived experience with somebody with a disability. And so I think that's awesome. Does anybody else want to share what community looks like for you all? And I mean, we're kind of going off script, but what does community look like for you? I love it.
This is Malcolm from Bucks County Center for Independent Living. I think I agree with most of the prior speakers. I think as a community has been enlarging so much that people who couldn't participate before are now. And so I see it as much broader than it was before. And so that's the way I'll say it. And it just kind of make things available to, even when you have peer groups and stuff like that. It's not limited to people who can show up. You know, we can employ Zoom to engage others and stuff. Even though there was some division over the last past, I think things are getting much better, and especially with the CARES Act and other things that come our way and stuff like that. And just wanted to add that.
This is Aileen Martin in Watertown, New York. So just a little bit north of Jean, actually. And I think that for us, community has expanded pretty much as just has been described before, because we're rural. Community was like disability community, but of the county that you're in. And now that we have Zoom, it's bigger. Anyone can join the support group. It's not like I can't get to that group, or I can't talk to that. I can't be in that advocacy thing because I can't be there. And now it's like blowing out of the water. Everybody can be anywhere, just about. Once we get once we improve the accessibility for the technology, because that is still also kind of a problem, and access to technology, the internet is a bit of a problem, but it's the same. It's a smaller version of the transportation problem we used to have. So community kind of used to be defined by transportation, by who we could gather around, and now it's like much bigger for us.
This is Kathy from Northwest Georgia Center for Independent Living. And before COVID, before this whole year, this past, we maybe did a conference call or something like that on a three-way phone or whatever. But this year we've learned a lot of technology and a lot of tips and shortcuts. So our community has grown that much as far as tech goes, and as far as making our consumers more aware and feel more comfortable using technology. Okay, so that's it.
Thank you for sharing that. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I thought that even though it's been a whole year, I'm on the fence about the whole technology thing, because, and to me, when it comes to connections, you can't meet personal connections, Yeah, I think I've had consumers who they want to work on social skills, and then they hide behind the technology. They use it as an excuse not to get out there and really interact with other people, So it's like a catch-22. It's like, I agree with you that it's helped with community, but at the same time, it's hindered people who need that personal interaction. So it's like a catch-22 to me, so.
Thanks for sharing that. Mel's, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Just going off of that, and like this could definitely just be coming at me as a Gen Zer, but like as one of like the internet natives, like I lived on the internet growing up. Actually, if anybody knows what Neopets was, I met my my fiance on Neopets when we were 14 years old, and having those connections that specifically like as a undiagnosed autistic at the time, now diagnosed, having that ability to connect online was a game changer for me. Like that's where my major friends came from. That's where so I just want to like share that just so we can be careful when we're talking about like what is a real social connection, because some of my best social connections that I have had are through the internet. Like I have friends that I've never met in person before. But we Zoom all the time when we can get our time zones to line up. And just having this past year has been a lot, but being able to connect with people online and having that be accessible, and like a lot of the times like I'll have my camera off because like I can't sit up for long times, I need to lie down, and this is just really like increased accessibility for me. And like I'm excited to have in-person events again, but I know moving forward we're aiming at hybrid just because so we can reach our communities.
And I see a couple other people's hands up really quick before we jump onto the next person. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation, is exactly what Mel's kind of pointed out, is that slowly outside of IL and outside of your center, our society has been moving online. People are meeting on dating apps or online platforms. We've had schools move online for over a decade now, to have online classes as an option. There's so many meetups that happen. There's social media platforms that originally, when we first started learning about social media, you had to learn about Facebook. And once you mastered that, that was it. And now there's like, how many can you manage at one time? Which kind of platform, video, text, all those types of things, images. So we've been moving as a society towards this. So there's so much of the population that has felt comfortable here. But I think it also goes to show that at that point, it was a choice, right? We had a choice to join in. And that's what I think I'm really wanting to capture. So I thank you, Scott and Mel's, for kind of sharing those two different perspectives, because I think it's important of where we voluntarily went and we're comfortable, and then some people felt like we've been thrust into this. Go ahead, Jen. I saw your hands up.
You know, one of the issues that we run into in rural Eastern Montana is internet service. People getting good internet service and being able to afford internet service. It's hard to Zoom with these deep rural communities. I know the LIFT office covers 18 counties, and we do 10 and a half of those over here. But our people are spread out. It's like our closest town is 38 miles away. And we're one of the bigger towns over here. So, you know, we might have a population of somebody that has a town of 300 people and their internet is sketchy as heck. Cell service in between, I can tell you about every spot, but you're going to lose it out here. So I feel like we are running into a different problem than people that are in a bigger city. Even in Billings, you know, it's a bigger area and people have, I feel like, easier access to internet than over here. Thank you.
Hey, Jen, does that mean that you guys deserve 2 senators? I'm kidding. I'm joking.
I'll take them all.
You can have ours too.
Nadine, I see your hands up.
Okay. I wanted to reiterate what, is it Jan? I'm trying to remember. Everybody's face moved on me all of a sudden. But yeah, we've become kind of a hybrid. Who knew that COVID would have us thinking, how in the world are we going to do IL skills? How in the world are we going to perform some of the services that we are able to now provide virtually on either Google Meets or Facebook Live, or, you know, there's so many different ways that I've discovered that you could actually talk to people. I was not tech savvy. I knew how to use my basic computer to pay my bills and do different things, but I've become a lot more, I'd say I'm getting there into the 21st century, or whatever the next century is going to be. But we've come out of the desert into a watery place where we're able to provide the services. We were like, what are we going to do? We've closed down. What are we going to do? But we're able to provide the IELTS skills, especially. And one of the things that we had problems with for the last 5 or 6 years since I've been with the center is getting youth involved and finding those youth that would want to connect to who even identify as disabled, and reaching out through Facebook and social media and getting our platforms updated. We've got, they're coming out of the woodwork, and they're even coming out to assist us in building our platforms for what we need. So this, I say it's the pandemic. In one way, it's like, oh my gosh. But in another way, my boss is he's considering being hybrid now, where we offer certain things online and we offer certain things in person, depending on what that individual wants. So a lot have come out of this last year for us.
Awesome. And I think so many people can agree with what you're saying, that this has been a tough year, but there's been a lot of good things that have come out of it as well. You all took community and went really broad, and I loved it. I should have known that I can never know the Mike Beers mind when he starts a conversation. So I do want to know, though, I'm going to actually launch a poll real quick to just see, before COVID, and we'll do another one afterwards, but before COVID, what community meant to your center. And by this, before I launch it, what were you actively engaged with? Which communities of this? And it may not be the same interests, it's populations more so, or settings of where people are. So if you could just take a minute, before COVID, where were your centers actively working? What populations, what settings, and that kind of thing. So it says, who was considered community before COVID? There's multiple choices: disability community, schools and colleges, community without disabilities. So the community without people with disabilities, were you engaging with those? Communities of marginalized groups, nursing homes, group homes, prison and juvenile justice centers, for-profit businesses and not for-profit businesses, so other nonprofits, and then the foster system. And I find it very interesting we're not at 100% for disability community, but we're still going. Okay. I've seen some of the votes are starting to slow up now. It definitely looks like disability communities a whole. That's good. That's our purpose. We're all on the same page there. And I threw in some youth pieces to see kind of that engagement with that as well. And it looks like other nonprofits was a popular one. They, you know, we all kind of have that same mission, so that's understandable. The foster system, about 30% right now is the community without people with disabilities, so engaging with those without. 50% is nursing home, 42% is group homes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end it. So that's where we're at. I just think this is, I just like to know kind of where we were at with a lot of different things, to see who we were working with. As we are just talking going forward, you know, defining that community, I think is so important. And we kind of jumped into this, but how you're defining community now, and how it's molded isn't the right word I'm looking for, but it's merged into new things and new areas, and made you really expand kind of what you were already doing. And I don't like I wrote it wrong, but I do want to launch one more since we're not after COVID. That's the part I don't like. But my next poll is the same exact thing. I just now want to know, what does that look like for you now? So how are you defining community now? So while we're in COVID, who is your center actively engaging with now? The same categories of disability community, nonprofit organization, for-profit businesses, community of marginalized individuals, prisoner juvenile justice systems, nursing home, group homes, schools, colleges, community without disabilities, and foster care. They're in different orders, so I like to confuse you if you wanted to go the same one. Now we're engaging with more of the disability community on this poll. That's great. All right, I'll give it just a few more seconds.
Don't you automatically get to click that box if you're on this call?
That's what I thought, but it turns out it's not 100%.
I got on here to engage with people with disabilities.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end it just because it's funny. We almost hit 100%, guys. We were 96% for the disability community, but then not profit is 76, so that went up this time. So it looks like we're engaging a little bit more with our community as in general, of our people within around us, whether we're physically or not. About 59% with schools and colleges, and 43% with community without disability. So very interesting. I'm about the same for the for-profit businesses, but it looks like we've gotten an increase in marginalized communities as well. I mean, COVID's been tough and we've lost a lot of people and it has been horrible. I feel like just these two right here kind of show us a little bit of hope within kind of what we've been doing, that we've been reaching out to new places. As we continue the conversation, I know that we have about 20 minutes left, because I'm sure you have to run to another Zoom call, so I didn't want to get in the way of that. But let's continue. So what, some of you kind of talked about this, so if we want to continue expanding, I know there was one more person that had their hand up. What programming were you doing before? What ways were you already on? I think it was Nadine, you talked a little bit about y'all kind of really amped up your social media. So was that a struggle before? I know the center I was at before, it was a really big struggle with social media, because who has time for that when you're actually working and doing all the programming services? So
mostly young people too. We were missing that young sect of trying to get it set up. I didn't even know. I heard of Instagram, but never been on it. So until then, now we're on Instagram. So
yeah, and Paige, I'm going to pick on you because Able, I always think that y'all have done an amazing job in the last several years. What was your social media presence before?
I can't take any of that credit. It is not in my job description. But I think that's a huge part of it, is that we have a young staff member that's really devoted to a good bit of that, and has been. And I think obviously it's grown in this COVID year, because we're trying to, it became almost like the main means of communication a lot of times. But I think we did a lot of campaigns and a lot of our grant work and tagging our funders and supporting them. And really, it's good to model accessibility where things aren't always super accessible. And social media is a huge part of that. And I think it's really cool when our staff in our staff meetings come in and say, hey, now there's auto captions, or alt text is a setting now that you can put in. And, we've been doing image descriptions for so long and we're still going to do them, but it's exciting to see some of those other pieces come into play in some of these social media platforms. But that's something we've been doing for a long time across multiple. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then specific to some of our programs. So our youth programs have their own separate social media. We're exploring Discord for our YLF alumni and staying connected based on their interest, and a lot of them sharing their handles at the last YLF. And we're like, oh, this is a platform we need to be on. So exploring that with each other, I think is really great, and taking that guidance from youth. It's helpful in connecting with schools. Schools have a lot of Facebook pages, and teachers are on it, and they're part of groups, support groups and teacher groups. And so it's been ways, it's given us more connections, the same way that when we're at a table for some interagency meeting that we're trying to connect with those people, we're doing the same thing in those Facebook groups. I'm hoping I'm touching on what you were hoping to hear.
Okay. My mute did not like me for a minute. Yes, that was exactly, because you all do a great job of just a lot of images on Instagram. In case you're not familiar with it, it's pictures. It's all images. And so making that accessible to everybody is a challenge, and it takes extra work. It's not just posting something on Facebook that's just words. There has to be that image description. So they've done that in other areas as well. As far as programming, what did virtual programming look like for everybody? A couple of people have talked about this, of what that looked like before COVID. And we all know that we've kind of been forced there, but did you have any online programming that was existent before that has been able to maintain through any of that, through this last year?
Good. Yeah. Yeah, we got, because we had Zoom, we found that we could connect more. And so that was a mixed thing for us, because with all the ability to connect, we were in so many Zoom meetings, and ideas were like superfluous and exciting, but they were so many that there was really no time to implement even the best of ideas. We're still trying, you know. We have these good ideas piled up, and but we have only so much daytime and so many other parts of our lives to pursue, that we had to, and we still have to play the balance. So we can get very enthusiastic. We can have so many meetings, but we have to be realistic about what of our discussion is really core to achieving the goals. So.
Hi, this is Nadine. I hate to, say so much, but, this is like where I get to come and talk to other people who are going through basically the same thing. We did not have any platforms to where we would do anything that way. However, in speaking with some of the individuals that would contact us and in reaching out via social media, we've started a audio book club where people will come and they'll listen to the book, and then we have a conversation about the book that we're reading at that time, and we do chapter by chapter and so on. That's growing. We also have something called a Freedom Train, where we give updates that's going on in the community to different individuals, and those are two of the things that we do at our center. And then what we've done here in the state of Maryland, all the Center for Independent Living have gotten together, and we have a program called I Am. It's I Am Amplified, getting out to all the people who are in the state of Maryland who have disabilities. It's a place for them to come and express. We do trainings about different things. We have people come in and speak on different topics. So we're building our platform little by little as an agency, and then as all the centers for independent living here in Maryland.
Awesome. That's awesome. Mike, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Cool. Speaking for our base program, which is our community engagement center. So before COVID, it was a physical location where we hold daily programming, and then we were open to students for drop-in. I would say before COVID, our virtual presence was really our Facebook page, sharing pictures, sharing photos of the things that were happening physically, but then also messenger groups. Messenger groups were kind of a way to connect those individuals that were part of the programs in between sessions. So if you're involved with the improv class, and you want to stay connected in between those times, our messengers groups really kind of served that purpose. It also gave us an opportunity to make announcements if a class gets canceled and such. So luckily, our staff and some of our volunteers have been great. Almost every program has moved virtually. So with a little bit of tweaking, we were able to figure out how to do improv over Zoom, which is fun because you end up being a 24-hour news correspondent the entire time, which is cool. But I would say the programs that really have either grown or we really added as response were like our RPG nights, role-playing games. So I think most people are familiar with like a Dungeons and Dragons as a platform, but there are others. And we're all about, to borrow a phrase from an April colleague, we're all about putting chocolate on the vegetables. So yes, we're doing an RPG night. We're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and we also have a wrestling group. But we're using that to build confidence. And for those that aren't familiar with RPGs, it's about creating a character and then taking them through a story. So you're learning all kinds of soft skills as well as some very practical things. So and engaging in something that people are interested in. I think photography group, we just added that, which we haven't had before. So that in Montana, we're still socially distancing, wearing masks in a lot of communities, but the weather's getting nicer. So what can we do to not be in front of Zoom all the time, but still engage with each other? So actually from one of our students that we work with in the high school, they were like, yeah, we're really into photography. So now we meet once a week to share the photos we've taken on social media, and then talk about them over Zoom. And then we have a couple of people that are more familiar with it, so they can give us tips on how to make a better picture, how to take something like that. And then that gets you out when you're not on Zoom. Go take a walk. Let's take a picture of nature or something like that. So yeah, we've been able to tweak some and add different programming being virtual.
Yeah, I was going to add what we've been doing for programs is we've been really looking at helping to create a safe place to talk about whatever emotions that you're going through, right? So a lot of people have been feeling really isolated and down. So we looked into not only improving improving the our own internet, so and our technology, but also so that way we can help reach out to other communities who don't really have the option to go somewhere or have time to drive out to meet up, right? So we created something called Let's Connect, and it's a program where basically it's a peer-to-peer program. We've had many people calling before this peer-to-peer counseling, who have been talking about, suicide, or how they've been feeling depressed, isolated, who need extra resources. So by having this program, people could come in and talk about whatever they want to talk about. They can hear stories of how somebody is going through something, and maybe somebody else is going through the same situation, and they can talk about how they worked through that. If there's ever the people that are hosting our meetings, if they ever see somebody who could use extra resources, they'll direct them to CalLife, and we'll give them, like, whether it's like access to food or access to housing or whatever benefits they might need. So that's what we really helped with which is building our technology that we've never really thought we would really not need to do, but it was more addressed. It was addressed quicker, and then also, how are we going to help support people at a difficult time, and what can we do? So.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else? We might have time for one more person to go. If you want to share what your programming is looking like now. Awesome.
Okay, I'll say something real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the other things that I thank God for the CARES Act funds, because so many people, we do outreach into the nursing homes, and we have delivered, I think, maybe 6 to 8 Chromebooks to people who were missing their family, who were in a place of depression. And we were able to reach out to them so they can connect with families again, and, just be a part of what they need to be a part of. Some of them are now in our book club. But yeah, so someone had mentioned, that they created something to help, and that I Am program that we did is because so many people were isolated. They didn't have a place where they could go and share. So I'm really grateful that we are building upon and learning from each other in this meeting.
If I can,
Awesome.
if I can offer something real quick, my name is Jed Barton. I'm at Lyft in Billings, and one of the things we latched onto really early on during the pandemic and got a grant for and used some other funding for, we've been distributing those Echo Dots, the Alexa things to our consumers. Many of our consumers, particularly who are of a certain age, let's say, where, we could give them a Chromebook, but they wouldn't know what to do with it. And then they're consumers of all ages, that is true of. The Alexa, as long as you have the ability to talk to it, which granted some people don't, so that isn't something. But for those that do, and those who may not be able to see a monitor or something, you say, Alexa, play Yellowstone Public Radio, or Alexa, tell me a joke or something. And we found that has connected people to something in the outside world that they might not have access to, provided they, of course, have internet and reliable connections, which, again, the further out you get from Billings tends to be a problem. In Eastern Montana, as one of our senators said in a house or in a debate in a committee on 5G technology for some of our larger urban areas in this country, we're talking about 5G, and in 2. Montana, we don't have 1G.
We've also given out grandpads for those older adults too. They are the greatest.
Thank you both for sharing. I want to launch one more poll just right before the end. And this is, I'm just hoping to see how you feel about your services. Do you feel like your services to your community are stronger now than before COVID? And I did it in a stand and declare method. That way you have to pick one. but I'm going to break the big rule of we're not going to discuss it afterwards, but we will keep discussing. So as we're polling right now, I want to thank you all for joining us. And remember, this is just the first part, kind of just seeing where we started, seeing where we were going. And I do want us all to kind of join back together if you're able to in June, or if you have a coworker or more centers that you know that aren't on here today, to jump in to the next one. The next one will be leveling the virtual playing field on June 9th, same time Eastern time. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. It's been a minute. Somewhat agree. We're more positive than we are negative. So I feel like that's good. Okay. So I do want to just make sure you see this. So that is our next call. Will be on June 9th, 2 o'clock Eastern time, like I said. And we're going to pick up right where we left off today, what you have going on, and maybe that will look different in June. But then I also want to talk about where those gaps are. I know I want to jump into that discussion of rural areas that are inaccessible due to access, and how we're meeting that. And then also, how do we all kind of make sure we're meeting our consumer needs that maybe we haven't thought of? I know there was a lot of new information learned today, so hopefully we can keep learning together. And then we talked a little bit about that confidence of having to teach the technology to ourselves and to our consumers. So I join you, or ask you to join me in June. The third part will be in August. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And I really thank you all for being here today. Again, we are a community amongst each other. And so if we can learn as all Centers for Independent Living, I think we're going to just benefit our communities even more. So sometimes we just have to discuss what we're doing to figure out where we need to go from here. So hopefully this was helpful. And I look forward to seeing everybody back on June 9th. Have a great day.
Thanks so much.